our
Mr. Sitole, sorry about that, Mr. Malaxi. Can you please restart? We didn't hear you.
Thank you, Chair. I was just acknowledging the portfolio committee members, the Deputy Minister and the leadership of the entities. Mindful of the time pressures that you have, Chair, I think I'm going to keep it very brief. The entities led by, starting with ICASA, which is led by Chairperson Mutibi, will introduce the executive team that has accompanied him for this session. With the FPB, they are led by the Deputy Chair, Professor Charlie, who will also, at the time where they are presenting, will introduce the team that he has brought. In a nutshell, Chair, we are accounting for the two quarterly reports, one being Q1 and Q2. And what we saw through our own review of the quarterly performance is that for the first quarter, ICASA achieved 77% of the targets they had set out for them. This improved to 89% in the second quarter. With the FPB is approximately around that vein. They've consistently achieved 78% in both the first quarter and the second quarter. And of course, noting that both are still under 80%, that is, of course, for concern and leaves room for improvement for the outstanding two quarters. But they will get into the reasons of some of the issues that contributed to that performance and what has then been put in place to ensure that the performance for the third quarter, and more so for the third quarter, which is the one that we are in now, will see an improvement and the mitigations around that. With that, Chair, I will defer back to you so that we've got enough time for the interactions. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister Malatsi, for your brief introductory comments. Let me then welcome the delegation from ICASA, led by the Chairperson, Mr. Mutibi. Mr. Mutibi, your platform is yours. To you, sir. You have been allocated 25 minutes. Together with your input and your team's presentation. Mr. Mutibi, the Chairperson of ICASA.
Good morning, Chairperson, honorable members, Minister, Deputy Minister, and my colleagues from ICASA, and all those that are participating in today's meeting. Thanks for the opportunity, Chair. Chair, I'm joined by our CEO, who will then be taking us through the presentation for the Q1 and Q2. And within our attendance, I've got councillors who obviously will be on standby for any other possible questions for clarity that might be required. And the CEO is as well supported by members of the executive committee. Chair, from my side, just for this to give the context, you'll recall that the APP that is before you emanates from our first year in the current administration post the elections. Our 5-year plan that we had came to an end in the previous year. So what you have in front of you, it's our committed program for the current financial year, which is actually being advised behind the backdrops of our medium-term development plan of 2024 to 2029. In the main, Chair and members, priorities that are informing our plan, it's one, inclusive growth and job creation. So in all what we are basically going to deliver, which we've committed, those are programs that are meant to contribute towards that strategic priority. Secondly, we are meant as well as part of our delivery program to identify regulatory interventions that will reduce poverty and tackle the high cost of living. In our case, obviously, the high cost of conducting business. And lastly, is the whole issue around the program that is meant to contribute towards a capable, ethical, and developmental state. So in our program, you may have noticed, Chair, which is something that the authority will be re-engineering in the years to come. Our APP in the main, you may have noticed that almost 80 to 85% of what we've been delivering, it's more of an operational type program. And I know that through you, Chair and members, questions that are always asked to the authority is, to what extent are we contributing towards changing or improving the lives of South Africans through our regulatory intervention programs? So you have noticed that from our APP, there are a number of regulatory interventions that we have put together, which the CEO will be outlining. This ranges from the updating of our radio frequency plan all the way to development of the new satellite licensing framework regulations. I'm raising this, Chair, just to demonstrate that as much as when you look at the APP, one might be inclined to think that the authority, in us delivering our mandate, we need to be seen to be addressing issues that are a pain point in our society. We need to be seen to be coming up with a program that obviously will unearth not only local SMMEs, women, people with disability, but to make sure that we attract investment in South Africa. So allow me, therefore, to ask the CEO just to take you through in terms of our committed year plan. And I think in our discussion, let's have an opportunity to identify areas of improvements that we may want to look into in our new financial year. As we know, we're almost now in Q4. But in my closing, what I would like the chairperson and members to note is we have made some very good strides within the authority. Firstly, on governance. In the current financial year, we've been able to develop and complete our performance management contracts for councillors. I think this is something that has been outstanding for a very long time. We only had one member, which even a day yesterday, we met with the DCDT. So I can safely say that in terms of ensuring that from a governance, our performance contract as councillors are actually in place so that with the minister and the committee, we can start doing the evaluation. Secondly, one of the key issues was to make sure that we update and align our key internal policies. We have noted that in some instances, Chair and members, our HR, finance, IT policies, many of those were outdated. And I think in trying to stabilize our internal process was to prioritize that from our governance. In most is to make sure that our key governance committees, I'm glad to inform you that we now have all the established governance committees. We have put them in place. Lately, we'll be now capacitating the Social and Ethics Committee. This is mainly to make sure that from a policy point of view as council, including the CEO and the team, we have oversight structures that can support us in our work. And I think this is a good achievement. Lastly, it's strengthening and advancing our relationship with external stakeholders. I must say, Chair and members, we've seen a very tremendous improvement on how we engage with our external stakeholders, including the ministry, the DCDT, and the portfolio committee. And primarily, internally with staff, I think from us as council, we've put in things that normally people would think that they are just taken for granted to make sure that staff is continuously informed about developments so that we're not just being seen to be doing outward issues. Lastly, it's our international relations, just to make sure that any other activities that happens within SADC, within the African continent, South Africa as a country, we need to make sure that we put all regulatory measures so that for any new emerging trends, standards, we are not left behind as a country. So I thought maybe let me just give you that appetizer to say, apart from the APP, issues of measures and acquisition, we've done quite a lot. There are companies that you have seen in the industry. So this has been our program, just to rebuild and strengthen regulatory confidence to South Africans and to those that have got an appetite to come and participate in the South African ICT and postal sector. Allow me, Chair, then at this stage to introduce our CEO, Ms. Tsiamo, if she can then take us through on the APP as submitted. And thank you for the opportunity. With your permission, Tsiamo, if you could proceed. Thank you.
Good morning, Honorable Chairperson and honorable members. I hope you can see me.
We can't see you, CEO.
Can you not see me, Chair?
No.
Apologies for that. My video is failing me, Chair. I'm gonna have to.
Let's proceed. CEO.
Shall we proceed? I apologize for that, Chair. I'll sort it out, I promise. I'll let IT to assist me. Good morning, Chair, once more to yourself. Good morning to the honorable members. Good morning to the Honorable Minister, Honorable DM, the DG, if you are in the meeting, leadership from respective entities, especially the ones from FPB, and greetings lastly to the principals, the Council of ICASA and the colleagues. Chair, we are presenting before you the Q1 and Q2 as ICASA. And as the chair has said, in fact, it was the minister who spoke about ICASA having achieved 77% in Q1, and later on we improved to 89%. But before we get to that, Chair, I thought it's important that I bring to your attention as the portfolio committee an issue that we're grappling with as the authority around our APP and the reporting thereof. Chair, we realized at some point that the APP that was brought before yourselves for approval lacked some information that we deem very critical in terms of the TIDs between us and the editors as we exchanged the documents and we were dispatching. There were some pages that lacked the critical information, as I said, along the areas called the technical indicator descriptors. And what that means, Chair, is that in our reporting, we always have got to make sure that as we report in accordance with that which you approved as the portfolio committee. It may have been incomplete to some extent, and it would be unfortunate because if we report as per our performance as ICASA and not necessarily what you approved, there may be inconsistencies. And I understand that what I'm saying now may bring about some confusion, Chair. I'm happy to come back and clarify what this means and the impact thereof if we have time at a later point. But if you don't mind, I'm going to proceed, Chair. And as I said, we are sitting at 77% in Q1 and 89% thereafter in Q2. Chair, thank you, Nico. Chair, I thought it's also important that we talk to the programs or the divisions where we did not achieve most of our targets, and also that we bring you into confidence in terms of what is it that we are doing to catch up and where are we now, especially because it's Q3. And I would like to start off, Chair, and say you would see that in the first quarter, that finance was lagging behind, and you are probably going to ask us, but this has been for some time. But I want to attribute, Chair, some of the non-achievements to what I spoke to earlier in relation to the APP discrepancies that we picked up at a later point after the approval was sought from yourselves. The issues in finance, for example, spoke to areas where these critical information that I spoke to was not on the APP, and as a result, even though we had performed, we then had to let go of those targets just to make sure that the credibility of the reporting from the ICASA perspective is improved, Chairperson. And what's on the screen now, so that I don't confuse you, is a target that relates to the reduction of the material misstatements. And we had this as a target because we are really committed to make sure that whatever we report is free from the material misstatements. And when AG comes, we have no issues. For this target, Chair, we did not measure ourselves in Q1 simply because we know that the AG report gets given to us in July and the Q1 only ends in June. You probably are going to ask us, but why did you have this as a target, although you know that the evidence you so require would only come at the end of July, which now falls within the second quarter. So, Chair, this is some of the issues that I spoke to around the inconsistencies that we realized later on that an earlier version before the one that was approved was given to yourselves erroneously, for which we take collective responsibility, Chair, with retabling before yourselves. But Chair, when we conversed and deliberated amongst ourselves and the governance committees, we were of the view that the process that we would employ to come to yourselves may even be longer than us conceding and in making sure that whatever we report is as per what was approved, although may have been erroneous or even incomplete at the time. And this is one of the issues that I spoke to, Chair. We are not necessarily worried per se, Chair, because we know that collectively and cumulatively we will be catching up as we proceed throughout a number of quarters. If we were to proceed, Nico, and again, I don't want to read through the presentation because I know the members have had a chance to go through it. Chair, you spoke to the issue as a committee and collectively around us not paying the invoices on time. And I want to sit here and say, although you see the screen saying that we had targeted 70% and we were at 55%, this as you know, we had always said that we had issues around staff constraints and we had issues around the manual systems that we were employing, but we had since corrected this part. And if you look at the numbers on the ground, you would have necessarily realized that we had really done well. It's just that because the TADs were not linking up to the face of the APP, we had to then work with whatever that was there, and hence we then settled for the 55%. But you will see later on, as I take you through a slide of even the SMME payments, that there's been significant progress on this instance. The only issue that we have not implemented on the mitigation factors that we promised you that we would implement, Chair, is around us making sure that there's a long-term solution that speaks to the acquisition of a ERP system. That is still ongoing. We have not yet closed on that. However, all the other issues that we promised around the policies, around the structures, have been submitted to the relevant committees. We have appointed the service providers to assist the finance unit. We've appointed people, and we really are doing well. The other issue that we will deal with is just the bigger structure that we talk to re-engineering of the finance division as a whole, which has been recommended for council. It's a matter that we need to just to table before our principals, Chair, and we assure you that by the end of March, that as well would have been closed. So we move on, Nico, to the consequence management, and Chair, I would like to spend a bit of more time here. Because I note that as the committee, again, you have been speaking to us around this issue. And if you don't mind, Chair, that we move, Nico, to the slide that talks to the consequence management stats and all of that so that we can take the committee into confidence. Chair, between Q1 and 2, we had 33 matters that were before consideration of the Loss and Control Committee that we established in ICASA. And as at the end of Q2, we had dealt with 13 actions relating to the matters that were reported. And obviously 20 were remaining at a time, and 4 of the 20 were at determination stage. What this means, Chair, is that we were still getting representations from respective people that were affected, and the other 16 as well, we were also talking to the affected employees. However, these were also now at the discussion level with the Office of the National Treasury. We will be meeting the Chief Procurement Officer on these matters, Chair, because some of them emanated from the investigation that we did internally for us to really make sure that we are on the right track. And we are in a process of condoning these, especially 16 of these, Chair, that I'm talking to. So these are the stats, and I wanted just to give you a sense of comfort. Yes, it's not all of them closed, but I needed to say to yourselves that we're taking them very seriously. And this slide therefore demonstrates the strides that we took, Chair, just to make sure that we close off these cases. At the end of Q4, you will see that there will be a huge improvement in terms of the matters that are now sitting at a green. We are fortunate because we don't have matters at this point, Chair, that have been reported to SAPS in terms of criminality and all of that. So the matters that we're dealing with are matters where we need to either enforce discipline, retrain our members, and also educate, just to make sure that we embed a culture of accountability, Chair. Thank you so much. We can go back, Nico. Apologies for this, Chair, for the confusion. And we may then proceed, Nico. I'm still talking to Q1. Yes. Chair, the other issue on the finance side relates to procurement spend around women-owned companies that ought to benefit from our effort, where we were sitting at 21.38% instead of 25, Chair. And we are saying that our efforts have not necessarily yielded, getting the responses in terms of either bids or RFQs from the women-owned companies, and that we are going to be very deliberate in our efforts now to target them. And you are going to probably ask us, but why are you not, making just this about them? You would know that this is a space that's very highly regulated, Chair, that there ought to be a level of proof where we show that this was a competitive process. However, what we are doing from the policy side, Chair, is to make sure that we also relax some of the provisions on our policies and also employ the strategic sourcing plan to make sure that these are then highly favored as opposed to other respondents that would be, getting or giving us feedback in terms of the bids that we are advertising as ICASA. We can proceed, Nico. Thank you. Chair, the last, probably the second last target I want to speak to relates to internal audit, where they had a plan to conduct what they call consulting or advisory assignments. And because for the 8 months or so, we had a reduction in the capacity, they then reprioritized other areas. And then they said for this one, we can always catch up as it's a cumulative target. However, what we have done from our side, and again, we're dealing with a case of ill health, which is something that you can't necessarily plan for, but we have then since given them a panel of service providers that they are now utilizing for such cases. They've got about 10 audit firms on their panel for them to use. And this has yielded the positive results because, as you can see, we have since exceeded the target in Q2. Thank you. Then I'm talking to now regions because we missed 6 targets in Q1. For regions, Chair, this relates to the complaints process. We have an internal process and a timeline that we've set as ICASA for us to really give ourselves time to resolve the complaints that we're having. However, Chair, I must admit there are other complaints that are complex in nature, whereas we would need to consult with our licensees, in several instances. And this is one of those where we were outside our turnaround times as a result of that. Again, this one, Chair, we are of the view that we'd rather delay closing off on a matter than us unlawfully closing on a matter, because that would also trigger other repercussions that we don't want. We have since caught up on this one, and we have been having ongoing meetings with our licensees, and we are quite fine when it comes to this target, Chair. Even in the subsequent quarters, we've not had the similar issues that we had. Thank you. Chairperson, I'm now getting into our Q2 reporting. And in Q2, I really would want to speak to the areas where we did not achieve so that I save you time. This issue relates to the number of stakeholder engagements. It's in corporate services. And this one is also attributed to the wording that was not so clear, because one said AGM, the other said meetings. And we then agreed with our internal audit assurance provider, and we said that to the extent that you giving us assurance are not convinced, would rather than say we concede, we let this one go, because we know, Chair, that we've been engaging our stakeholders, and we have also met, our SMME cohort in Q3, and we also have other events that we are scheduling. So we are going to catch up on this one, but to the extent that we didn't want to create the inconsistencies I spoke to, we let this one go, not necessarily because the work was not done, Chair. We were hoping to retable, as I said, but after careful consideration, we thought that the effort to retable is going to take more time than us then conceding and really ensuring the credibility of our reporting system, Chair. The next one is, I spoke to this one, Chair. I'm going to pass through your permission. And the next, I also have spoken to this one. It's the women-owned. You would see, Chair, that the effect is from Q1 to Q2. And if you read this, you probably are going to be concerned. But as I said, we are doing our best. Again, if you look on the ground and you compare what we have in terms of the stats, you would realize that there's a lot of more work that was done. But again, the discrepancy in the TIDs and the APP would have put us at the back foot if we continued to claim this as achieved. But the work has been done. There's been a lot of improvement, Chairperson. However, we needed to, again, concede and lose this target so that the AG, when they come, they don't raise unnecessary findings. Next one, Nico. All right, thank you. Maybe before we get to a point where the CFO can speak, Chairperson, if you allow me, the chair of ICASA spoke to issue of us making regulatory interventions to better regulate, in the public interest. I would want to go back to the slides. Thank you so much. And really, Chair, say to yourselves that as we come before the committee, the concern we got the last time was that you're telling us more about admin. We're not hearing about what you are doing from a regulatory side. We wanted to highlight to yourselves that, for example, in the licensing and compliance space, in the Q4, we are going, Chair, to be publishing the draft satellite regulations. We are en route now to council for approval. Our legal team is working very hard to make sure that these are duly vetted before council can then approve. You would recall that earlier last year we had the public hearings, and this is the work that culminates from the efforts that we made, Chairperson. If we were to move to the policy research and analysis side, and I want just to single the signal distribution regulations. In January this year, Chair, we have tabled the draft, we have published rather the draft regulations, and at the end of March, we are confident that we will be publishing the final regs in this instance, Chair. And if I were to go on to the engineering and technology side, and I want to just sample the regulations on rapid deployment, Chair, this is a matter that's been talked to for a while now. We are en route to council, And as the end of March, we will be publishing the draft regulations. We are now en route to legal. In fact, I know that the colleagues are vetting what we have that would be given to council as the draft regulations. So, Chair, I thought that let me just give you a sense of what is it that's to come at the end of the year. I'm not going to talk much, but maybe there would be interest on the municipal elections, Chair. We had the public hearings yesterday on the regulations surrounding this area, Chair, and you will hear from us when it comes to this one. Then we can go, Chair, to an area relating to unspent funding or underspending. I think it's important, Chair, that I pause and take a bit of time to speak to the committee around this area. You had previously said to ourselves, we want more money, but we are underspending. And I probably realized that it's how we have probably been reporting. So we want to now be more open. It may take a long time in terms of presenting, but I think this is useful for the committee. Chair, from the budget that we get, that you appropriate to us and we get through the DCDT, we have gotten around 51 million extra for this year. And 51 million of that money is specifically tied to the Spectrum auction project. And this adds to the money that we've been having all along, the money that Treasury said to ourselves, ring fence this money, you can't use for anything else other than your regulatory interventions. And they were specific to even say, we want you to auction Spectrum again. So some of the bulk of the money that we have, we can't touch, Chair. And if you look at our balance sheet, it's going to obviously balloon because it will tell you, especially the income statement, it will tell you that we've got money. But that money is the money that you can only use for a dedicated process. If I were to just give you an update of what's happening, for the auction, Spectrum auction, we have advertised the bid. We've received responses. We are currently evaluating those companies, whether they can be appointed. And by the end of February, if not March, Chair, we would have appointed these company or just one, depending on what we're having. And then we're going to be spending a lot because we need to do a Spectrum evaluation process. You also need to make sure that there's an information memorandum that we publish that would guide what are the rules of the game and all of that. We're going to also enlist the services of the auditors, of the lawyers, and all that money is going towards that. Until such a point that we appoint Chair, we can't touch that money. So I thought it's important that we let you in on that process and the limitations we have around spending that money. The other issue that contributed to the underspending would have been that we paid our cost of living only in Q1, which is between April and June. And again, as you know, we have a self-imposed moratorium just to make sure that we manage our liquidity. We currently are operating, Chair, at a deficit of about 35 million rands, which is against the PFMA, but the Treasury understands and we have been very transparent with themselves because if we don't do that, there are other considerations that will be problematic. Chair, you also have asked us to come to you and tell you of our budget, how much contributes to us defending our mandate in terms of legal fees. The legal fees are about 14.6 million to date as at quarter two, which contributes to 15.7 of our budget. This goes towards the cost of us defending our mandate. And I thought, let us just let you in on that. I spoke to the issue around licensing and compliance being the biggest division having the money that is ring-fenced, Chairperson. But again, what you need to know is that there's a number of bids that are still to be concluded. And once that is done, then you will see a shoot or a very high increase in terms of the spending that we will be experiencing. Thank you, Nico. I think, Chair, if you do not mind, if I can then conclude here on this slide that's before you, and then I will invite the CFO to just come in. Chair, lastly, I would like to speak to the payment of invoices for SMMEs, and just to show you that we have made some improvements within the limitations that we had. We had received 171 invoices. We've paid 87% on time. 2% of those were still in dispute. 11% were outside the payment period, Chair. And again, it would be outside the payment period because you would recall that for ICASA, we close 2 weeks of our December. Our offices are not working. So if you don't give us your invoice before we close off, or we do a temporary shutdown, those are some of the invoices that were impacted adversely. But we have since caught up with paying of these, Chair. And we'll obviously do better in terms of us educating our suppliers that we operate not in a full month's basis, especially in December, that we normally close at a certain time. Chair, I will stop here and allow the CFO, through your permission, to come in and maybe speak to the finances. Thank you, Chair, and apologies if I took long.
CFO.
Thank you, Chair, and honorable members. I'll come in just maybe for a short. I'm not trying to not to be too long. Chair, from a spectrum point of view, overall, towards the end of Q2, we had collected 93% of the 2 billion that is budgeted. 91% thereof, which was more or less 1 billion, was spectrum. ECNS was 96% collected, 95% on broadcasting, and also 100% on postal collection. So overall, we're almost towards 100%. But as you know, majority of the money is paid earlier than towards the other quarters, Chair. We can move to the next slide, Nico. Chair, here I'm gonna, maybe the key issue here that the CEO also talked on, Chair, is that in that 580 million that is allocated for transfers, or the 294 that we see there cumulatively, that money will include the money that is solely for spectrum. I think at the end of the quarter, we had, of the 2 quarters, we had received about 151 million thereof. So we cannot use that money, but for spectrum that we are gonna be issuing in due course, Chair. Just maybe to add on that issue of like why the spending is low, especially on goods and services, towards that there was an amount allocated for the spectrum, but the service provider that is supposed to allow us to kick in or to kick out the process of allocating the spectrum decided they want to change the bids or the terms of their bid, so we could not then award. We had to go back to the market, Chairperson. So when we are comparing the annual budget and the cumulative balance, Chair, we should note that, Chair, this is the whole budget for the whole year. So we are then, if we go to the next slide, we're gonna be looking to say how much percentage per program is sitting there, Chairperson. So when we look at that 43% that we see for administration, for instance, we must not share that is actually compared to the overall budget for the entire period. Is not to say for the 2 quarters we were supposed to spend 347 million. Is actually meant to be less for that. We always say for best practice, we must try to maintain things around 5% less than what we budgeted for, because otherwise you run into trouble of overspending and unauthorized expenditure, Chairperson. As I indicated, Chair, bulk of the money that is not yet spent is actually under licensing and compliance, which is linked to the IMT, Chairperson. We can go to the next slide. I think the CEO. So this is the income statement, or the income side of it, as indicated, is that 51 million. Bulk of the other income, Chair, is interest income that we receive on our own cash flow, Chair. If there's money, if there's interest that we get from investment of NRF money, we then transfer that money together with the capital to the National Revenue Fund through the department. Next slide. I think we've already spoken to this, Chair. We can move to the balance sheet, Chair. So overall, from an ICASA point of view, but I must highlight that this actually exclude NRF transactions or balances. So from an ICASA point of view, our own transaction, we're sitting at 862 million, of which 98% thereof is made up of PPE, intangible asset, and also cash in the bank, Chairperson. Liabilities were sitting at 261. The ratio says we're still liquid, Chairperson, from a process point of view. But again, this is where the CEO was talking about the money that we have that we cannot spend on anything else but regulator-related activities, Chair, including the spectrum. That is where most of the money is sitting, Chairperson. Once we kickstart the processes, we should see it disappear, Chairperson, or spend. The next slide. This is basically the breakdown of the cash flow, Chairperson, to say we've got 745 in the bank. Petty cash was 5,200, and there was an investment of 25 million for NRF. Next slide. I think this should be the last. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Chairperson Mothibi and CEO and CFO for your presentation. I indulged you a few minutes extra because you had to explain that normally at the outset, and also that you are a regulator, and I thought it's important we allow you to clarify certain matters. But thank you so much for your presentation. Let me then invite the Deputy Chair of the FPB, Professor Tali, who will then lead us for her opening remarks, and then she will also lead her team that will be presenting today. Professor Charlie, the platform is yours.
Good morning, Chair. May I just double check if my video is visible?
Yes, you're visible, Prof.
Thank you so much, Chair. Then good morning, Honorable Chair. Good morning, honorable members of the committee, the Minister, Deputy Minister, DG, colleagues from ICASA, and other colleagues on the call. Chair, as indicated by the Minister, and then as yourself, it's myself as the Deputy Chair of the FPB who is representing the entity today. The Chair of the FPB unfortunately could not be part of the meeting, and she does send her apology. Then just two things from our side, Chair. The first being to introduce FPB's brand new CEO, as he will take the committee through our presentation, Advocate Norman Gidi, who is the new CEO of the FPB, is no stranger to this committee, as he joins us from ICASA. He does come highly recommended and previously served as the executive responsible for regulatory affairs at ICASA. On the call, he is also joined by the CFO of the FPB, that is Ms. Hulisani Ramugadi. Then, Chair and members, on the Q1 and Q2 reports, generally the performance has hovered around 78% for the period in question. And Chair and members, the overall organizational APP target was 10 in terms of the Q1 and Q2. And in terms of the total number of achieved APP targets in Q1 and Q2, these were just above 7. And that left us then with a total number of 2 unachieved APP targets for Q1 and Q2. These amount to just around 22% of unachieved targets for the period in question. And then, Chair, lastly, one of the highlights we would like to put before the committee is the work that we are doing in partnership with schools, communities, and local government leaders. Recently, we hosted a very successful Internet Safety Day celebrations in Mahikeng in Northwest. In that engagement, we were joined by children from quite a number of schools, by parents, and the leaders of the community, such as the mayor, as well as the Khoshi from the area. I think that, Chair and members, this demonstrate our commitment to being publicly accessible and the need for engaging community in pursuing the agenda of of the FPB. And then Chair, may I then invite the CEO and the CFO in presenting the FPB Q1 and Q2 report, also with a special emphasis on the intervention strategies that we are putting in place in resolving the issues and the targets that we did not achieve. Thank you, Chair and members. And then through you, may I invite the CEO to take the committee through our presentation. Thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you, Chairperson and Deputy Chair, Professor Charlie. We now invite the CEO of FPB to do your presentation. Advocate Norman, DG.
Thank you very much, Deputy Chairperson of the FPB, Honorable Chairperson of the committee, Honorable members, Minister, Deputy Minister, DG, and colleagues. Thank you for the opportunity to present the Films and Publication Board's performance for Q1 and Q2 of the current financial year. As the Deputy Chairperson has already indicated, over the 2 quarters, the FPB has achieved the overall organizational performance of 78%, which then shows a steady progress in executing our mandate to protect the public and particularly the children from harmful content while contributing to a safer and a more responsible digital ecosystem. If we can move to the next slide, CFO. As part of Q1, and through you, Chair, I would like to combine the presentation of Q1 and Q2 in order to save the time. With respect to the online safety education and our awareness target, the Q1 target was to then develop a plan to be approved by ESCO, and that was achieved. With respect to Q2 target, with respect to this item, we were then expected to have achieved the 50% of the implementation of the online safety plan. I should indicate that the FPB mandate is to educate the public about the importance of responsible media consumption and the significance of content classification in making informed choices. The activities that we then conduct under the online safety education and awareness target, they include webinars and podcasts on FPB's mandate, engagement with law enforcement agencies, media engagement on FPB trends and compliance matters, collaboration with various departments, including Department of Basic Education, on learners and educators with respect to online safety framework. As I have indicated, we were not able to achieve the target for Q2, which is 50% implementation on online safety. We were only able to achieve 37%. And in the main, the underperformance was primarily driven by delays in executing the awareness plan, stemming from internal planning and coordination challenges that we had experienced, which then resulted in some of the engagement not taking place in Q2, hence those engagements had to be postponed. Those engagements include the engagement or collaboration with our partners, such as the law enforcement officers. I am happy to then report that we have since embarked on remedial action, and the law enforcement workshop has since taken place on the 10th of February in Polokwane. Chairperson, we are planning another workshop in March, and those workshops will then take place in Cape Town and KZN. As part of the remedial action, we have an improved planning and coordination with the stakeholders. We have developed a structured remedial plan to ensure the delivery of all outstanding targets, and we are then ensuring an ongoing monitoring to ensure that we achieve 100% by Q4. The Deputy Chairperson has already spoken about the Safer Internet Day that we have hosted on the 10th of February, which is then part of our acceleration plan to ensure that we deliver the target. With respect to the self-generation revenue against the total revenue, we didn't have the target in the quarter. This is an annual target wherein we seek to attain 15% of self-generated revenue against the total budget. However, it is important to indicate that as of Q1, we had achieved 19%, and as of Q2, we had achieved 15%. If you can move to the next slide. We have the AI strategy as the Films and Publication Board. And this AI strategy is a comprehensive plan that outlines how FPB will then leverage AI technologies and tools to achieve its strategic objective and enhance operational efficiencies, and also to then address the operational challenges. As part of the implementation of these strategies, Chairperson, it then includes the online content monitoring system, wherein the system is able to assist us in terms of scanning the news platforms, the social media platforms, to identify and cluster content potentially that is linked to harmful and protected or prohibited rather material. And this enhances significantly our role in terms of monitoring the online space. With respect to the classification decision, these are the decisions that we then make relating to the rating of content in terms of age appropriateness for the viewership, which then includes the consumer advisories on what elements are then contained which may be harmful or inappropriate for the viewers. So in Q1, Chair, our target was 80% of classification decisions. We were only able to achieve 76.5 in terms of classification decisions, which were issued within 7 working days. And in terms of the actual numbers, we are then talking about 200 classification decisions, which were issued within 7 days, and 47 decisions, which were then issued outside the 7 working days. We have since taken the corrective action, Chairperson, and the corrective action then includes internal resource reallocation to then augment the classification function. And this intervention that we have taken, it has since yielded positive results in that in Q2, we were then able to achieve the target. We were able to achieve 87.4%, which then simply means that 207 classification decisions were then made within 7 working days, and only 26 were then made outside 7 days. As part of the work that we do, Chairperson, we then provide quality assurance auditing with respect to the self-classified sample content from the commercial online distributor. And this is the process that we then do to ensure that the distributors, the online distributors, then complies with the FPB's classification guideline. In Q1, the target was with respect to having the plan, and this plan, Chair, it was developed And in quarter two, the target was to have the ESCO approval with respect to the plan, which was also approved. Chairperson, one of the targets that we were not able to achieve in both two quarters, it relates to the assessment of child sexual abuse material or CSAM material. This target, Chair, it then measures the content assessed on cases referred and reported to FPB, which then contains suspected child sexual abuse and exploitation material, or we can simply say child pornography. In quarter one, we were only able to achieve 40%. In quarter two, we were only able to achieve 50% against the target of 90%. This shortfall, Chairperson and members, in the main, it was due to the high case volume and the limited human resources capacity, as well as the lack of the automated system. With respect to the measures that we have since implemented, they include prioritizing the system matters as well as prioritizing the blockage clearance. And we have also resolved to enlist the services of external aspects to then augment the support. The long-term solution is to implement a system wherein we can then automate the analysis of the system content. And those are the issues that I had wanted to then flag. If you can please go to the next slide. So with respect to Program 5, Chair, everything has been achieved. It relates to the research agenda, which was approved by Council, as well as the research report, which was approved by Council in quarter two. We also have the role in terms of processing the application for registrations. These application for registrations, they include new and renewals, as well as online and physical outlets that are then being processed and they are then being registered and be issued with the registration certificate. With respect to the regulatory compliance implementation, we have an annual regulatory compliance plan, which plan then include physical inspections, online inspections, market surveillance, industry engagement, and monitoring of the social media platform. The target that we had set for ourselves, it has been achieved. With respect to the enforcement against non-compliance, these are the enforcement actions that we take against the distributors, both commercial and non-commercial, who are then operating without registration or distributing unclassified, harmful, and prohibited content. And the target was achieved. I will request through you, Chair, the CFO, to then take the members through the financial information. Thank you.
Good morning, Chairperson and committee members. So from the financial point of view, we have been faring very well. When you look at the projected income or revenue versus what we've budgeted for. So in the first quarter, we were able to collect 27%. And out of that, our expenditure was sitting at 18%. That shows that what we have collected versus what we spent, there was a little bit of saving. And that is the result of the tightening of expenditure on our side. So the breakdown of our revenue, you will see that the biggest contributor to our revenue is the grant that we receive from the DCDT. We have received the grant for both quarters in full. We also do invest the cash flow at hand to enhance our income through interest. And what we had forecasted for the first quarter was more than what we received, and the reason for that was the budget, the interest rate cut, but also the delay in investing that interest in the first quarter. But in the second quarter, we were able to recover and make sure that we invest the interest, the balance on time, and catch up on the shortfall. With regards to the regulation fee, all the classes of regulation fee are performing very well, except the annual renewal fee, which is under collecting. The reason for this is that the distributors are allowed 30 days to renew their registration annually. And if they don't renew within the 30 days, then they have to start the registration from scratch. You will see that our registration fee is over collecting. And on online license fees, we are fairly doing great when you compare it to what we've budgeted. This is an area that we were struggling in the previous years, but this year we have improved drastically. And then in the second quarter, you will see that our revenue, we've collected 63 million of the revenue, which is aligned with the 50% budget that we had set for ourselves. And we only have a small variance of 144,000. Which is an over collection. And that revenue collected is matched with the expenditure, which is sitting at 58 million. And you can see that when you compare the expenditure versus what we have budgeted, we are also below, which is good performance in terms of improving our financial sustainability. We had closed the previous financial year with a deficit, but in the current year, or rather as at end of December, we recorded a surplus of 7 million. So this is the spreadsheet that zooms into our expenditure. I will touch on few expenditures that are over or underspending. The first one being the personnel. We recorded an underspend of 5.4 million. The main reason of this is the vacancies. But if you look at the consulting and professional fee, you will see that we are overspending. This is because there are certain services that we opted to appoint service providers because we couldn't appoint the employees due to the organizational design that is currently underway. So we opted to outsource those services. And as a result, the savings on the personnel nets off with the consulting fees. We have also recorded a saving on the office rental. This is as a result of moving the regional offices, both Cape Town and Durban, to the SABC buildings, and that came at a fraction of what we were paying to the previous service providers. In terms of council and remuneration, you will see that we are currently underspending on both council fees and enforcement committee fees. This is just the timing difference. We have a lot of enforcement committee activities in the second quarter, so the committee was sitting considering several matters, and as a result, at the end of the financial year, the spend will be equals to the amount that was budgeted. And I think on facilities, one area that we zoomed into and are overspending is the water and electricity. The reason for this is that when we finalized the budget, the increase was based on the average spend for the previous financial year, and linked to the percentage increases that would have been communicated in the previous year. But the increase that we receive from the municipality ends up being higher than what we've budgeted, followed also by the consumption that we try to manage, but that line is overspending. I think I'm going to stop here, CEO. Thank you.
Thank you very much, CFO. Through you, Chair, I will send it back to the Deputy Chair if there's any remarks to make. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Then in the interest of time, back to you. We'll then respond to the question as they arise from either yourself or the committee members. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Deputy Chair of FPB, and thank you to the team for assisting me in managing the time and for the very succinct and precise and pointed presentation. Colleagues, there we have it. We've taken the two presentations of ICASA and the Films and Publication Board. It's 11:42. We also note that the Minister had requested to be released at 11:45. So, Minister, we note that you will be leaving us, unless you wish to have a few comments before you exit, Minister, whilst members are just gathering their thoughts, and I look for hands from members.
No, Chair, no additional thoughts to the presentations. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Honorable Matafa, you will go first, and then we will take on additional hands. Thank you so much, Honorable Matafa. I recognize you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good morning to yourself, the Minister, the DM, leadership on the two entities and members and everyone on the call. Chair, let me take this opportunity to thank you for giving me time to participate in the discussion, and also to thank the presentations that were made. They really do assist us in doing our oversight work. The presentations are straightforward, Chair. I wouldn't have too many questions, but just a few comments. On ICASA, let me take this opportunity to thank them for being alive to the need of paying SMMEs valid invoices within 30 days. Even though we can see there's an 11% shortfall, we would really encourage them to ensure that they pay 100% within the 30 days. But the work that is happening, we truly appreciate it. And we also want to commend them on being realistic as far as the regulatory and policy environment is concerned, and their plans in relation to how they keep up to breast with the current developments in carrying out their mandate. And on FPB, Chair, I just have one, and it's on the underspending as far as vacancies are concerned. One, what would be the reason that the temporary positions are not being utilized? Because I believe that for them to be there was a reason. Why are they not utilized? And maybe the vacancy rate, what is the cause? I understand and hear that the organogram or the organizational design could play a significant role, but if you have vacancies or roles on your structure and you do not fill them, why don't you come to a decision of just removing them from the structure and maybe change the organogram to speak to what you really need to be able to execute your mandate? I only have those few ones, Chair. I don't have anything beyond that, but thank you for the presentations. They are straightforward, as I said. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Matafa. Honorable Delisha.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Good morning to you and the colleagues on the platform. Chair, let me start with ICASA quickly. And I think maybe the first point I wanted to make, Honorable Matafa has touched on it. It is the issue of being very slow in paying the small companies. And I think, Chair, let's emphasize that you know, that the small businesses are struggling to survive. So ICASA must do better in ensuring that all small companies are paid within legal days. We see that, you know, they've managed to pay half of them. They must just make sure that they pay 100% of the companies to just assist them in doing their businesses. And maybe another interesting, or the matter I'm interested in, Chairperson, is that Cell C is suing ICASA for, you know, almost 30 million. Imedia is also taking them to court. They are being taken to court by these big companies, you know. And I'm wondering, why is it that ICASA keeps making decisions that lead them to all these expensive court cases? What is it that they're doing wrong? Because they seem to be weak and bullied, like they're in court all the time. Maybe they can just clarify to us, why is it so easy for them to be taken to court? Because they are always like, is it the laws that are weak? Are there loopholes? What is happening? Why do they seem to be easily bullied by these companies? And maybe, Chair, they can clarify then the status of these court cases. And another thing is that now Cell C wants their money back. So if they do lose the case, where are they going to get this money? Is it going to come from the same budget that is meant to be, you know, helping our people and regulating the industry? And Chair, just the before the last one for me. So ICASA is also investigating companies like DSTV, right? But the investigation is stuck because they can't hire experts. I just want to understand, why are they not hiring experts? Is it because there are no experts? Why are they failing to hire people so that the work can, you know, this is the work that is very important because it can potentially lower prices for South Africans. So this is the work that needs to be done. Why are they not doing it? Is it because there's no experts out there? Maybe they can clarify that for us. Lastly, for ICASA, Chair, is that their report shows that money was wasted and, you know, spent irregularly. I heard the CEO trying to explain to us that, you know, they are investing in consequence management, but what has been done here for this particular thing? What is it that has been done to ensure, you know, this doesn't happen again? Just two quick ones for FPB, Chair. So the FPB report shows that they are failing badly, Chair, in their unit dedicated to fighting child sexual abuse material. Their own target was to assess 90% of the cases, but they only did, I think, 50 in the first quarter and then 40 in the second quarter. And I want to understand, why is this unit failing so badly? And what are they doing to fix it? Is there anything that they're doing? They blame, you know, which is something that happens. They blame capacity. They blame capacity, Chairperson, when they have 11 funded vacancies. So this should be linked, because you can't come in front of us and say, you know, we don't have capacity. When you've got vacancies and you're not employing people, what is the reason of not employing those people? Why are those vacancies still, you know, not filled? I don't understand. And maybe lastly, Chair, maybe lastly, I'm trying to get my notes. So another thing is that they have money left, you know, so they've got all this leftover money in several areas, but again, this often means that the work is not being done, the work that is promised. I think now I've learned to understand that whenever any entity comes to say, we've got money left, it means that they aren't doing the work. The work that was supposed to be done is not done, right? Because now, and this is important because the budget that was meant to teach the public, especially children, about online safety is the money that they didn't use. So they failed exactly in what they were supposed to do. Why is the money not being spent? Why are they not doing because this was largely in marketing. Why did they not do that? And then they come and say, we've failed to do the job. What should be done now? Because they failed to do exactly what they're supposed to do, not because there's no money, but someone is just not doing their job. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Felicia. Honorable Bodlani.
Good morning, Chairperson, to the Minister, the DM, and to the meeting. Chair, perhaps as a portfolio committee, we must acknowledge the appointment of Mr. Norman Gidi and wish him everything of the best in his new position as the CEO of the Film and Publication Board. My Chairperson is very few comments. The FPB talks about the automation of assessment of child pornographic material, and that's a term that makes me really uncomfortable. With that said, Chair, what would that mean for the personnel? Because it is my understanding that currently I just cannot remember the position and the term they use for people who do that sort of screening. What does that mean for those people? Do you repurpose them? Are they outsourced? Are they full-time employees? And of course, we talk about being the regulator of the future. And we cannot talk about regulation and not talk about automation and using of technology. So I'm not sure how that will look. And Chair, I think this week we saw the unfortunate incident of the e-hailing driver who we literally watched him die on our screens, on our phones. And this, for me, begs the question to say, at which point, without being in any state, without censoring, do that sort of content come down? And perhaps this is also a question that we face from our constituents as lawmakers. I'm not sure if FPB is able to perhaps speak on that and to empower the portfolio committee. And on ICASA, Chairperson, I think we note the improvements on the SMME payments, and indeed colleagues have already spoken to how this needs to be improved, and perhaps with the next quarter's reporting, this will be recorded. The ICASA spoke about having had public hearings on local government elections. At the last portfolio meeting, we had the SAPC who informed the portfolio committee that there has not been an approval of funds for them to capture the local government elections. Did that conversation arise during the, I beg your pardon, during the engagements with the SAPC? And with the mandate that ICASA has, what would be the consequences of that, or what interventions are there? I'm not sure even if ICASA is really fit to speak on that, but I will try my luck. Chair, the CE speaks about legal cases and ICASA going into those to defend their mandate. It is worrying the amounts that we are hearing being reported on legal costs. And especially because they are fighting with giants, private companies with very deep pockets, while ICASA is relying on grants from government. What alternatives are there? And with the understanding that the CE has explained to say it's really defending their mandate, but what are the alternatives that we do not find ICASA in court at such exorbitant costs, where it also means that when two elephants fight, it is the grass that suffers? That would be ordinary South Africans that rely on issues such as SA Connect and the migration from the analog to the digital switch off. So let me stop there, Chairperson, and really thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Bodlani. I think it's Honorable Choki Adonis. Honorable Adonis.
Apologies, Chair. I was just struggling with my device. Through you, Chairperson, may I humbly request that I do keep my camera off?
That's in order.
Thank you very much, and greetings to honorable members, to the Minister, the Deputy Minister, and also the representatives from the entities as well. And also just appreciating the presentations. Chair, my questions are going to be very short and precise. I think let me start with ICASA. I think with ICASA, I'm going to start with, in terms of the procurement processes. I see in terms of some of the targets, they are unable to really speak towards attracting woman-owned SMMEs. But with that, I think for me, it would be that I'm not seeing where they are giving us a segregated breakdown of the beneficiaries within the procurement system and processes of women, youth, and persons with disabilities, or those who are previously disadvantaged, which is something that we must always emphasize with our state-owned entities or institutions that are aligned with government. In order for us to reach, obviously, and to meet collectively the NDP plans that have been outlined. Additionally, in terms of the performance, the financial performance, I think it's quite concerning to see that that particular section, or I'm going to say section or committee within ICASA, in terms of its performance, has not necessarily improved. What is ICASA's intervention, or I'm going to say future or long-term interventions in terms of mitigating the financial areas within the institution, which is quite critical? But also, do they have any form of strategic plan on bringing more on board private investors, taking into consideration that it is a Chapter 9 institution and does have the ability to outsource resources and funds? I think it's quite instrumental for us to really have an overview of some of the donors and supporters of ICASA, and also what their prospective plans are, or strategic plans are, in acquiring more resources and funding. Chair, ICASA also being, a broadcasting regulator, which plays quite an instrumental role. Seeing that they, in quarter one, they made 70, if I'm correct, 76% of their targets. I could be wrong, but it's around the 70s. And in the second quarter, they made about 89, if I'm correct, of their targets. Have they looked at how they could best perhaps improve on these particular targets? And are they recurring targets that they've seen that they are unable to then meet? And what plan is put in place as part of the intervention in addressing not meeting those particular targets? And I think it's quite important for us to also get a sense from ICASA whether the targets that they are unable to meet, whether there is a pattern in previous quarters to date, and what are some of those trends that they are seeing that gives them an inability to meet all of their targets, and if there is room for more innovative ways in which they can set or restructure some of their targets to make sure that they are more applicable. The last one with ICASA, in terms of its evaluation on the vulnerable populations, that would be those who are also in your rural and township communities. What is the extent of ICASA's evaluation in terms of the targets that they have outlined and set, especially when we look at local broadcasting SMMEs and entities that are emerging, the type of support that is then given to them, and how are they fixtured into the broader targets of ICASA ultimately? And then I'm going to come to FPB. On FPB, I think I'm going to raise the same concern in terms of the regulation, in terms of, in conjunction also with the Child Protection Act, in terms of the what is this called? The exploitation, abuse of child or underage content. How far are we with that? Because that seems to be a target that is very low in terms of them being able to achieve and meet it. What is in place and what other stakeholders have they brought on board in order for them to have the ability to meet this particular target? And I think many South Africans will have a particular interest. We have seen on social media platforms and on other platforms that they are responsible for, where we are seeing the exploitation of minors and children. How best are they going to do this? Yes, we are speaking about AI and innovative and digital ways in which these can be detected. These service providers, is this services that are going to be outsourced? Are we building internal capacity? Do we have a cost breakdown towards that? And what does that look like in terms of timelines? And what are the relevant stakeholders that they've already started to engage with? I think my second question for FPB would also be in terms of them reaching some of the targets. And I think there was also an issue of the underspending, quite a large sum of underspending. I want to understand what type of impact does this have on the efficiency and operation of the entity when there is an underspending, and also if they can give us a precise figure of the vacancy rate, and with this vacancy rate, what impact does it have on its administrative and daily functioning of the institution? And then lastly, if they have the ability right now and to give us in terms of the complement, and I think this would be complement to both ICASA and also to FPB, in terms of the complements of demographic group representation when it comes to vacancies. What does that look like for women, youth, and persons with disabilities? Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Adonis. I think I had Honorable Mukhacha first, and then I saw Honorable Singh. His name came up thereafter. That's how I had recorded it. So Honorable Mukhacha, and thereafter Honorable Singh.
Midday, Honorable Chair, honorable members, and everybody in the platform, Honorable Minister, Deputy Ministers, good day. Chair, just few aspects from me, starting with ICASA. This high legal cost is a worrying phenomenon. And I'm not sure whether ICASA is unable to arrest this challenge, in particular when it relates to labor and some other stakeholders. Spending money in courts really is not appreciated, because it tells us that you don't have a stable labor section or your good negotiators in terms of dealing with your own stakeholders, either grievance procedures or dispute mechanisms. The plan is not clear as to exactly how then ICASA intends to stop this trend. And maybe the comment at that level. The second one, Chair, is in relation to manual vis-a-vis automation. In our last encounter, they did raise this question of manuals vis-a-vis automation. And I'm worried because it's a repeat again. And there's no report that says this is how far we've gone with the question of automation of our systems, and is used here as an excuse. Chair, I think we need to demand timelines now. When are they going to conclude the question of the automation of their systems? Because ICASA is one of the very high-profile institutions in the country, a highly respected regulator. It can't be grappling with the question of manuals in nowadays. So just tell us exactly how, to what timelines they intend to report to us in the next encounter. The third aspect is in relation to the APP discrepancies. CEO highlighted this and tried to explain that they brought an APP with discrepancies in our last encounter, which is a problem. Because I believe that there are many stakeholders that passes through even before you come and present an APP to us. You start with your management, your board approval, your ministry, then come to the portfolio committee. And that could not be detected. I appreciate the apology, but this must never happen again, because it means there's a potential of misleading the portfolio committee. The third one is the loss of some targets. I've tried to listen very carefully around this question of some targets being lost. I failed to understand. I couldn't capture exactly the reasoning or the explanation, and maybe if they could be elaborate more on this particular aspect. The under-resourced. Seemingly, Minister, it's a general trend across regulatory bodies that they are all under-resourced and unable, therefore, to perform due to the budgetary constraint. What is it, as a ministry, you are doing with Treasury in ensuring that legislative bodies, and I'm not referring to yours only. This is the explanation you are getting from all regulatory bodies, that they are under budgeted for, under resourced, and yet they're expected to guide and assist their entities. What is it, as the ministry, you are doing in terms of assisting ICASA as far as this particular matter is concerned? The second one is in relation to the FPB. I appreciate the progress, slow progress that you are making. But as far as violence exposure, that is your gun films and pornography, yes, there's a dent that you are making. But in our screens, it continues unabated. We don't see a difference. Well, there's no film that ends without shooting. And we're a country that is overwhelmed with gun shooting by criminals. And yet there's no difference as far as this. To what extent are you intervening, even at a level of SABC, to ensure that we reduce tremendously this question of violence in our screens? The last one, Chair, is in relation to our continental influence in terms of this portfolio. I didn't get a report or information shared as to exactly what are we doing the work we're doing in the continent as far as this entity is concerned. And maybe it's important because now we've got a new CEO that might be seized with that particular fact. Because we can't, our influence ends with the boundaries of the country. We must be seen to be doing something, critical work in the continent, so that we're able to restore or the dignity and the competency of the continent. And that's the thanks, Chair.
Thank you so much, Honorable Mkhakha. Can I then recognize Honorable Singh?
Thank you, Chairperson. Greetings to the Deputy Minister, members on the platform, and the delegations from our two entities. Chair, unless my understanding is not correct, I think ICASA also has oversight over the postal sector. So I'm not sure if the business rescue process changes that, but I would just like to know what compliance monitoring has ICASA conducted on the South African Post Office, and how is ICASA responding to the deterioration in the postal services? That's the one thing. The second thing, Chair, we've heard in the presentation that quite a number of the targets that were not achieved, the indication is that there were delays, but they will catch up either in the third quarter or in the financial year. So I'm not so sure that that's going to happen with all of the targets. So my question is, which of the APP targets are currently at the risk of non-achievement within this financial year? And I think in the way these presentations are made, I would like to actually just see some more constructive solutions as to when they are facing challenges, what do they actually need from us? So I think they must be front in telling us what support they require from Parliament or the department, for example, and they are not getting, what budgetary and legislative constraints they are that are hampering their performance. And I think we just wanted, I would like to see it in a proper report. So I think we understand where we need to support and get these entities to actually function optimally. And then regarding those targets that have not been achieved, what specific deadlines has ICASA set to address the underperformance? And have they identified who will be personally accountable for those missed targets? I also want to know if ICASA can quantify the consumer cost of regulatory delays or their missed performances. And lastly, Chair, I would like to know how ICASA benchmarks its performance against peer regulators internationally. Then when it comes to the FPB, Chair, I just have one concern there, and that is the organization redesign. We have been to a number of oversight visits, and we are told by various entities about this organizational redesigns. So they have indicated that the actual work is being done because they have outsourced that work to service providers. But I want to know, when will this organizational redesign be completed so that they have a proper organogram, and we can then understand what positions need to be filled and by when that will happen. Regarding the concerns that were raised by many of my colleagues regarding the content that's out there, especially that may be harmful to children, I want to know, how is the FPB engaging parents, schools, and communities on online safety, and what partnerships exist with law enforcement and international regulators? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Singh. I think there are no further hands. So
Chair,
let me, yes, Honorable Delisha.
Please recognize me, Chair. I forgot just short questions for FPP.
I'll give you a minute, Honorable Delisha, because we don't have much time. A minute, please, if you don't mind.
I know, I appreciate it very much, Chairperson. I will take that. Chair, just I just want to ask FPB, about their whistleblower report. I just want to know how many whistleblower reports were received in these 2 quarters, and what were they about, and the current status, because I find them to have been omitted in this, especially considering the staff morale collapse in the organization, because we can clearly see, it's visibly deteriorating, and because the performance of the organization is indicating that, Chairperson. And I just want to know how many labor cases are active with CCMA right now, and how many are at the courts, and how are they linked with the whistleblowers, because that is also not indicated in the report. And maybe they can just clarify to us why the legal spend is exploding, why is it escalating? And maybe the last one, Chair, to ICASA, why does ICASA allow Vodacom and MTN to keep data prices so high? That, we have our people hungry at home and disconnected, while you've got these big companies making billions in profits. Why are they not forcing them to stop, cheating our people? Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Felicia. Honorable colleagues, let me just remind you that the buses from your villages would leave at 12:30. So please be mindful of that. It's just a gentle reminder, it's 12:15. And we do have a house sitting at 2 p.m. So we would really like to release members so that members can have a meal and refreshen up before the meeting. But before I hand to the entities to respond, to indicate to the entities that I will be giving you at the most 20 minutes to respond. And if you are unable to cover that, then you're most welcome to respond in writing. And colleagues, there is some important correspondence we've received from the Speaker's House regarding 4 possible vacancies that will be coming up in the regulator, which I'd like us to then receive before we terminate. I don't have too many questions. Well, I have many questions, but I think my colleagues have covered me. I just want to ask the very simple question. How can this committee help you? Both entities that have appeared before us have got a mandate. And what we see and what we hear continuously is we are falling short of fulfilling that mandate. If I were to ask both entities a very simple question of what is expected of you, what are the gaps? I'm sure not only entities before us, but other entities will have long lists and wish lists. But more materially and more importantly, out of our core business, where are we falling short? For example, if you look at FPB has this very important moral mandate of saving the young generation. Now, if you are not properly resuscitated, if you're not using AI, etc., you're going to fail in that mandate. But you need to tell us, why are you not able to meet that mandate? Maybe it's an issue of funding, in which case we need to then speak to the department. We need to go to Treasury, because if we fail to ask these critical things, then we will fail to fulfill our mandate. Now, one question that has been nagging me for both entities, and we've seen that ICASA collected close to 2 billion rands in revenue from different types of streams of income, like spectrum, etc. Now, though that income that was collected, my understanding is that gets returned to Treasury, and the entire thing, including, I think, the interest on investment of those funds, gets returned to Treasury. So for both the entities, and you got FPB on the other side is collecting regulation fees. What are the gaps in that collection? That's my question. What are the gaps? Are you properly capacitated to ensure that out of the 100% potential income there is, you have been collecting as maximum? And maybe the difficult one for FPB, given the fact that you operate largely in an online platform, and largely the kind of entities and the kind of platforms you would want are these OTTs regularly operating in the kind of platforms you would be targeting, can always be wanting to hide and avoid regulation. What is your level of confidence that you're able to target them? And maybe what are the reasons that you are unable to target them? Colleagues, I think I wanted to appreciate the presentation right at the beginning of the chairperson of the board in terms of giving us a high-level regulatory overview. I don't want to get into detail of that, except to say that I think Secretariat, maybe at an appropriate time, we should schedule the regulator to come before us and give us a proper update in terms of what's going on in the regulatory environment surrounding the satellite, etc. But colleagues, I don't want to take away too much. I've had almost about 15 questions, and I'm not going to ask my questions. I'm going to allow the entities to respond. It's now 12:20. I'm going to give ICASA 20 minutes to respond, and at 12:40, I will stop you and then allow FPB to respond. You don't have to use up the full 20 minutes, but that is the maximum time we're going to allow you. And Chairperson of ICASA, I will ask you to respond, and then we'll ask FPB, and then probably DG would ask DG, and DM can then sweep and close in at the end. Chairperson of ICASA.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, if you allow me, I'm going to quickly then ask CEO if we can just package those answers. But in the main, Chair, just to answer the last question that you've asked, what are the gaps? I think currently the issue is on funding and the skills required to obviously respond to all the identified emerging trends. And in the main is the reconfiguration of many of the regulators that we have, because the mandates as we have them right now, given the type of trends technology, requires a re-engineering of our regulatory framework. So that's what I would put currently as one of the immediate gaps that needs to be closed. So it's more on the policy reform and, where possible, integration of some of our mandates so that we have a streamlined, integrated regulatory framework. Secondly, Chair, on the issue of ETV, without getting into the legalities, if members through you, Chair, could afford us an opportunity, because we're currently in court on some of these issues. It was related to obviously one of the auction process that we know in 2022. So if you allow me, Chair, for that one, I would ask with due respect that we park that one for now, because it's sub judice. We're still engaging with the licensee. Then with regards to the postal, good questions, Chair. Currently, what committee obviously ought to be appraised, as an authority, we do receive submissions from the post office in terms of their financials, tariffs, in terms of the lodging of tariffs. As a regulator, I can put it on record that we have in the past obviously identified areas that the post office perhaps needs to be looking into, streamlining their business. Now, many of what members may want to know why the post office has gone under in some of their operations, they are more internal. I think in terms of what we've been reading as an authority, we know that there has been attempts to modernize the post office. So as you know, if you don't move with technology on time, issues of e-commerce seems to have been one of those that have overtaken the post office business model. Where we are right now, there are obviously regulatory interventions that we've seen. Talking to our international counterparts, we see partnerships between the post office and some of their local SMMEs. And I'm sure the post office, where it is right now, is looking at either partnering with some of the OTTs, because we know from a technology point of view, it becomes cheaper and easier to access content from local POPs, point of presence. And I think these are some of the ideas that the post office, through their business rescue team, still has to come to the authority and tell us what kind of a resuscitation plan do they have. So we will, as an authority, where we can, obviously provide some regulatory guidance on how, not too much on how to run business, but on how regulatory intervention can assist. But safe to mention, Chair, that one of the areas that we've already obviously advised even the ministry, remember when we talk about digital transformation, the post office sits pretty well as one of the entities that can even provide governance services, like your IDs, passports, because we are meant to believe that the current infrastructure, whether it's fiber that connects post office, we need to take advantage of that. And I think that's the kind of a regulatory advice that we'll give and say, whilst Home Affairs work with the banks, there's an opportunity to work with the post office as well, so that in my village, I can go to Butokwa and get an ID from the local post office. So there's still life. I think it's more about how you coin the partnership with the likes of, as I said, either the OTTs and those that do parcel distribution. Again, the other issue of note with the post office, I think we have raised this issue that as and when policies are changing, without saying that you need exclusive rights from everyone, because as a regulator, we regulate for public interest. But it becomes important that when rules are changed, there are certain state institutions that needs to be obviously protected in how they provide services. I guess even some of the policy changes, like now, if you take away maybe, for example, exclusivity for some of the postal matters, then it might definitely have a financial impact on the post office. So, but we're engaging with the ministry to see how best, whilst policy change, we cannot just, erode that business into other new things, whilst recognizing that we need to promote competition in terms of Section 2 of the ECA. We need to see new players coming into the market, but at the same time, there needs to be a parallel and a parity and a balance between all what we have as our licensees. So let me allow then the CEO just to take the last few so that we are within time on the issues that I might not have responded to. But I just thought, let me give that regulatory high-level response to the issues that members have asked. CEO, if you could help with the remainder of the time, then so that we close. Thanks very much, Chair and members.
Good afternoon once more, Honorable Chair and members. I will do my best given there's a number of questions that we received, and thank you, honorable members, for the questions. I must say these are quite. Can you hear me, Chair?
Yes, I can hear you. I think I got an assistant chairperson here. Okay, he is. Thank you so much. Please proceed.
Apologies for the Chair. Chair, I was saying I'll do my best given the amount of time that's still remaining. The questions are quite intriguing, and I thank the members for that. Chair, let me start with what seems to be easily disposable of now, given the time constraints. And maybe let's go to the question from Honorable Potlani around whether SABC raised an issue around funding yesterday. They raised an issue around funding as a whole, but not necessarily that they can't broadcast the elections. Chair, we note with comfort that the minister undertook to be dealing with the matter, or to deal with the matter. And it's something that within ICASA, we don't have, the mandate to really intervene on. And we're hoping that the interaction with the minister will really bear fruits. I have also noted the issue you raised around the legal costs and what can we do to, either from a dispute resolution mechanism or something like that. Chair, we really are doing our best, but as you know, and I think one member did talk to the issue around the decisions that we make do shape how the industry is regulated and functions. And those, either if the licenses are of the view that those are not going to advance, competition and other interests, they are going to really fight back. And it's common cause that we operate in a very litigious environment. And from our end, I must say that most of the time, and hence I said earlier, we have been able to adequately and effectively defend our mandate. That says that the decisions that we make as a regulator are correct and are within the framework of the law. If I were to make an example around the CLC matter, Chair, we asked the question around, if they win, what are you going to do? Where are you going to get the money from? Unfortunately, Chair, the money has gone back to National Treasury. We have alerted them, and if the court case goes towards favoring the licensee, we will have to engage them. If they don't give us the money, unfortunately, we'll have to use the money that we have to run the operations of the organization. So that is the model I was talking to, that at some point we need to pause and say, to an extent that you defend successfully, we need that money to be recovered. But I'm comforted because the funding model proposes some of those areas here that I'm touching on. And with your help, we hope that we will close that loop going forward. Chair, thank you for the committee for accepting the apology. And really, this is not something that we're proud of around the discrepancies. I've taken note of this, and I must say that this has been an anomaly, has not happened before. The issue of manual versus automation, Chair, we will in the next presentation give you a proper, turnaround plan or roadmap of where we are and where we've started. I take that and the timelines. I've taken that to heart, Chair. We will improve as we go on. Let me see what else I can quickly touch on, Chair. And I'm trying to go to different members' questions so that I don't just deal with one. Chair, segregating the numbers according to the regulated groups, youth, persons with disabilities, and women, we will do that. We've got the data, Chair. We will do that. It's an issue of enhancing the reporting that we bring to yourselves. And maybe let me talk to the issue around inquiry or into the TV subscription. Chair, the work that we were doing as the regulatory authority has stopped simply because of the court case between eMedia and MultiChoice, and not necessarily that we can't get the experts. I needed to just clarify that part. It has implications because, as you know, eMedia, and again, the cases are sub judice, but I think it's in the public domain that they were requesting us to disclose some of the confidential information of our licensee, which is something that touches on POPIA and the license conditions that we have and other considerations, Chair. So we need to tread very carefully. I also, Chair, would want to speak to a very interesting point made by Honorable Singh around the regulatory delays and what are we doing? Are we costing the consumer costs around this? Very interesting. Chair, we're not doing that for now, but I gather it's something that we can give you a sense of, because there is presence and interaction we're having with consumers from a consumer advisory panel perspective, from an outreach perspective, and all of that. We can gather that information. It may not be readily available when we appear at the next meeting, but it's something we can look at. I have also taken note of the call, Chair, to be very open with yourselves and say, where can you come in? And the Chair has elaborated on that. But the big one for us would be legislative reform, as the Chair has said. Let me see, Chair, and I hope I'm not taking too much of your time. What else I can reflect on? Chair, the CCMA case from our end and the labor peace or harmony between us and the labor partners, I must say that we've worked very hard. In Q3, we had around 2 cases in CCMA. And those are recent. We had one that was long outstanding, but it has since been off the roll because the labor court ruled on the matter. And this again goes to showcase that we continuously make efforts to really bring labor close to us. We may not agree all the time, Chair, but they are part of our strategic sessions. They are part of the big decisions that we make. We take them into confidence before we make these decisions. But as I say, we don't have to agree. As long as we consult, as long as we are within the confines of the law, there are areas where we have considered that there will be disagreements. But where they come up with proposals, for example, we're working on a project together of really saying what is it that we can do together to reduce the wage bill and the salary disparities. They've given us the terms of reference. So there is that collaborative effort that we have with them, maybe hence the number of the less cases that we're having. Chair, I can see your look and I can feel the energy. I suppose maybe I should stop now and request that all the questions that I didn't get to, that the Chair didn't get to, we give to yourselves through written responses. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, CEO. CEO, there's one question I can't let you off the hook, and I think that's a question that permeates in entities that come before us. I mean, I think I captured this correctly when your CFO under the compensation of employees says there's a favorable underspending of 5.4 million on vacancies on jobs. And against the backdrop of ICASA, your chair has identified amongst the top priorities funding and skills required. How then do we reconcile and I know Honorable Felicia has raised it and other colleagues have raised it, we don't take joy as a committee when we see favorable underspending in compensation. How then do you adjust that? What were the underlying causes of that thing?
Okay. Thank you, Chair, for that question. And I think there's one other that I may need to respond to. I've remembered now. Chair, you would recall that we have the vacancies that are funded, and I think for ICASA it's around 25. And the minister has equally raised the same question to say, why don't you fill these positions? And our view, Chair, is that we have self-imposed in terms of the moratorium because we know that if we were to fill all these vacancies, our deficit is going to shoot up. And as I said, that is a problem because we are in violation of PFMA. We don't want the AG's eyes to really talk about sustainability and all of that. So that is one of the mechanisms that we use, Chair, to make sure that as we render the service to the public, we compromise certain things. And compromise maybe is not such a nice word, but what I mean is, where required, we would then get temporary capacity as opposed to, permanent positions being filled, because that is cheaper and we can use money elsewhere. And again, the wage bill is not too high. And two, we have people acting in positions where we are funding or we have funded positions because we know that we're going to pay the acting allowances and not necessarily your pension funds and all other benefits. So that's a strategy that we use, Chair, to survive until such a point that Treasury hears us and they give us some interim relief. I must give you comfort that we have met with the DG. We are meeting them in early March to go together to Treasury to really identify the low-hanging fruits on the funding perspective. Chair, if you don't mind, there's a last question you asked around regulatory gaps in terms of us collecting the revenue for the fiscus. You are quite correct. I can't give you assurance that we are collecting every cent we're supposed to collect now because we don't have the proactive tools that are real time. We can't tell you where there are leakages because of the archaic way that we're using to regulate. If you recall, we were very unpopular at some point because there was a bid we were supposed to award. It was $1 billion and we only have 100 million. So those conversations are continuing, Chair. And we are of the view that at some point we'll find each other. If not, we will have to utilize what we have to at least close a certain gap and not want to do an end-to-end as we anticipated initially, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you so much, CEO. Thank you for that responses. And I'm sure whatever you haven't covered, you will send it to us in writing. Yaboga, thank you so much. Colleagues, let's then just allow the Deputy Chair of FPB, Professor Jali, to lead the responses of you and your team. And DG, I would like you to make a note of the issue surrounding the funding and the conundrum, because what we heard from CEO is that she can't spend because she doesn't have enough of money to do critical things. But what we're observing, and we're saying is that these entities, especially ICASA, is unable to fulfill its mandate because it doesn't have the funding. So it has to cut corners because it needs to manage within a limited budget. As Deputy Chair of FPB, the platform is yours to respond.
Thank you so much, Chair, and good afternoon once again. I'll have a bite, Chair, and then what I will then do is to then request the CEO to then expand and then engage us on the any other issue that I may have left out. What I've tried to do, Chair, is to then thematically group the questions into about 3 broad issues. First one, I think, is around HR matters, and then the second one is around tech and STEM matters, and then the last one is any other emerging matter that may have been raised. And I think that on HR matters, and I think across the board, there were, I think, about 3 honorable members who have raised a similar question. The first one being from Honorable Matafa around the issue of the vacancies on the structure that has not been filled. As a matter of brief history, Chair, I think you would recall that the FP Amendment Act was done around 2019, and it therefore significantly increased the mandate of the FPB from being a mere classification authority to being a classification and regulatory body. And that meant that the mandate of the entity is quite broad, and there's quite a number of requirements in terms of that. And so the structure then that was in place was put in place considering that Amendment Act as well as the broad requirements with regards to the Act. However, the mandate has not been sufficiently funded. In terms of the grant that we receive, it has not significantly changed. And part of what we're then trying to do to deal with the HR issues, in light of there not being quite a lot of grant, is around the self-generated revenue that we are trying to raise. So those are some of the ways in which we are trying to respond to the issue of there being vacancies, but us not being able then to fill those vacancies. And I think that the second one came from Honorable Gilishe, which was around the underperformance in relation to system matters, which of course it's a matter of great concern for us as the council as well. But I think that in terms of context with what we are dealing with here, whenever there would be one case of system-related material that is registered with the FPB, one is looking from anything between, let's say, 3,000 images to probably close to 10,000 of images that have to be assessed by an individual. And I think that it was indicated that in that unit, we have around 2 or 3 people who are responsible in terms of this work, which are the child safety officers. And what we're then trying to do in terms of the unit 1 is around the issue of automation and the use of AI with regards to analyzing the images themselves, because we do believe that without being assisted by tech, we are not going to be able to deal with the issues efficiently. It would have been indicated that we have an AI strategy that we are trying to roll out within the entity, and we foresee that it will assist us in terms of trying to deal with the issues that we are experiencing in terms of that unit. And I think the second thing that as part of the strategy that we are trying to roll out is to revisit the partnership that we have with SEPS, because we feel that probably in terms of the 10,000 images that we have to analyze, half of them probably may not be relevant. And we feel that if we capacitate SEPS to then give us the most relevant material, it would significantly assist with the efficiencies in the system. And I think that this also speaks to the question that was raised by Honorable Bodlane around automation, which we do believe that it is quite an important strategic intervention. However, as much as it is an intervention, the human element cannot be totally taken away from the unit. So in terms of QA and monitoring, in terms of how the system works, we'll still need a human intervention on the system so that we just make sure that in terms of the results that we are receiving on that office are actually aligned in terms of what we're looking at. There was a point that was raised, I think, by Honorable Mukhacha around the partnerships that we have in the continent and globally as well with regards to the entity. We are members of InHope. We are also members of the Safety Regulators Forum. And really part of what we are trying to do with those membership is to make sure that the African voice as a continent is not lost in global conversations around issues of child safety, issues around CSAM, and issues around regulating the space that we are operating on. And then lastly, and probably lastly, around the points that were raised by Honorable Gilishe with regards to the whistleblowing matters that are within our attention and what are the numbers and so forth. We will bring a comprehensive response with regards to those cases. But I do want to emphasize around the fact that we began to see a rise and a drop in terms of whistleblowing matters around a certain point within the operations of the FPB. It was around the time that we were dealing with the difficult matter of the former CEO, who is no longer part of the FPB. And we did see a bit of a spike in terms of whistleblowing matters around that. They were dealt with in relation to the whistleblowing policy that we have as the FPB. There are comprehensive reports that are available in terms of the work that was done by the internal audit in assessing that in relation to our policy. Wherever there were issues that were around the council, they were, submitted to DCDT as the responsible authority in relation to that. And there's quite a number of steps that have been taken to deal with any whistleblowing matter that we received. There's report in relation to that, and should the committee request, those reports can form part of our response that we will submit in relation to the actual numbers that have been raised, and how we've then dealt with that. Let me then, Chair, request that the CEO respond to some of the matters that I may then have left out in my response to the honorable member questions. Thank you, and CEO, through you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Deputy Chairperson. There will be few issues that I would like to address. I think the first one relates to the demographics in terms of the representation. We have indicated in one of the slides, Chair, to then indicate that the total head count as of Q1 and Q2 was 87. And we had 43 women in position of making, 16 youth that are employed. Those are those who are 85 and with disability. In terms of the
is it just myself, but your connection is not very good, CEO. CEO, can I suggest you switch off your camera, please? The quality of your connection is very poor. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chairperson, for that guidance. If I may repeat, I was responding to the question pertaining to the demographics in terms of the staff. We have 87 staff members, and we have 43 women in position of decision making. We have 16 youth that are employed, and we have 2 persons with disability. In terms of the gender profile, we have 34 males and 53 females. Then moving to the question relating to the violence exposure on the television, it is important to then indicate that as the Films and Publication Board, we have the classification regime. And that classification regime is contained in the classification guidelines. And those guidelines are then informed by empirical evidence on what can be deemed harmful for adults and children. And those guidelines are then subject to extensive public consultation, ensuring that the standards are representative of societal norms, values, and standards. So the guidelines that we have come up with, they are then formulated in an evidence-based, transparent, and accountable system. So when we then issue the rating, we are then informing the adult that certain content might be disturbing to the adult or to the children, so that the adult can then be in a position to make a better informed decision in terms of viewing. There was also a question about the gaps in the revenue collection. It is important to indicate that the non-compliant distributors are then brought before the enforcement committee for imposition of fines and non-compliance. So this is one of the committees that has been established pursuant to the Films and Publication Amendment Act of 2019, wherein anyone that is not compliant with the act can then be referred to the committee, so that the committee can then adjudicate on the matter. So that then assists us in terms of the non-compliant distributors. There was also a question about the role on the OTTs, the role of the FPB on the OTTs. It is critical to indicate that as the Films and Publication Board, we then register the online commercial distributors. The online commercial distributors will then be the digital platforms that then distribute the films or games through the internet or through the digital platform. So we register them and we then provide them with a permit. And in terms of the permit that we then provide to them, we then expect them to do self-classification. And when they do self-classification, they then do that based on the classification guidelines that the FPB has published. What we then do as the FPB, we then conduct an audit in terms of the content that the commercial distributors would have classified, to then check and quality assure that that classification has been done in line with our guidelines. So those are the things, Chair, that I then thought that I need to address, but I think the majority thereof has been addressed by the Deputy Chairperson, and he has also indicated that with respect to certain matters, we will then provide written responses. Thank you.
Thank you so much, CEO, and thank you to the team from FPB for your responses. And we look forward to receiving your further communication in writing of those areas that you need to further cover. Let us then invite the DG for her closing comments, and thereafter the DM. And I would request honorable members to give us at least 10 minutes of your time, or 15 minutes at the most, so we can rise at 1:15 at the latest, so that we can then allow Secretariat to take us through a revision of the program, briefly the vacancies of ICASA, and if time allows, we can adopt the minutes. So DG, let me allow you, if you can go up to 3 minutes at the most, I'd appreciate it. And then let's allow DM a few moments to reflect.
Thank you, Chair, and I won't be long. And we obviously will respond to some of these in writing. Chair, I think the issue of in terms of legal cost of the litigations, it is obviously, I think we've been saying this, the nature of the sector being litigious. I appreciated the comment from Honorable Bodlani with the perspective that obviously those with big checks, they do obviously take us to task. All that we're trying to do, honorable members, is enforcing compliance. I think all of us, if we were to play our role, respectively, we wouldn't be in courts. But nonetheless, that's the nature where we're at, and we do try to defend, obviously, what is done in law, and ensuring that we don't allow a scenario where everybody think that they can do as pleasing, and obviously, at the end of it, citizens get harmed or the services are not delivered. Honorable members, I think Chair Honorable Singh asked the question with regards to maybe just to talk about further about the postal sector regulations. It is regulated by the regulator. I think one of the biggest challenges that we have, and in answering your question, Chair, what is then the capacity issue obviously remains. We've made numerous applications to National Treasury, supporting both, as the Deputy Chair of FPB said, when we actually passed the law, it was actually accompanied by a request for additional budget. And until now, that was in 2020, until to date, we have not received additional budget for the FPB. We make those applications year in and year out. Similarly, within the regulator, one of the biggest challenges, I think, in the postal sector is what we call ETOs. These are the extraterritorial offices of exchange. These are basically the unregulated players in the market, and there are quite a number of them. I've just looked now, and we'll be happy to share the information with the honorable members. But if you really look in terms of the list that is there, that is just about 2 pages, as compared to the number of players that are in the market, especially on the issues of delivery and parcel. And I do not want to name them, they know themselves. They're actually operating illegally. And we've got to get to a point of basically managing and regulating that. And it's the capacity issue within the regulator in terms of that they don't have resources, and also equally, they don't have the adequate tools, which also includes the equipment. One of the biggest applications that we've been making to National Treasury is to say, we're constantly asking us to award spectrum, but we need to get to a point of assessing the impact of the spectrum. But the regulator does not have the equipment to do that. Honorable members, you've heard previously where they have to drive manually, and obviously that becomes disputed. Whereas if you then have the adequate infrastructure, it's undisputed because it's applied in other jurisdictions and other markets. And this is basically the plea that we're making to ICASA in terms of more funding for both ICASA as well as for the FPB, because both of them are critical, especially the digital era. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, DG, for your brief reflections. DM, are you still with us? DM, can I invite you for some of your closing comments? Has the Deputy Minister left us? I don't see.
Earlier on, Chair, I heard that he was struggling with his device, and it's not the network, it's the device. Thank you.
Okay, no, thank you so much. Thank you so much then, colleagues. Let us park this off here, except to note that both entities fulfill a critical function. One is a regulator, and it is a highly litigious environment. And we hear this, and the other is one who protects our young people, especially from exposure. And if we don't close both these gaps and capacitate these gaps, these entities, we're going to find that it has a domino effect. The cracks become wider. And I think this committee then has a responsibility to support the department and to appeal to the Treasury to really to disperse more funding so that these are capacitated as they ought to be capacitated. It's really unacceptable. We hear the concept of manual coming up, particularly with ICASA. It's really unacceptable. But we'll park it off your DG. It's safe to say that you have the full support of the committee as you apply and as you try to solicit the support of the Treasury to get more funding. Colleagues, thank you so much for your engagement. We can release the 2 departments and officials. We do have a few committee work for the next 15 minutes that we'll try to deal with. Maybe just in an order of priority, Hajira, I wouldn't want the minutes to get carried forward. So can we then maybe, because it was the agenda, Hajira, allow you 2 minutes to take us through the minutes? And the reason I'm saying that is because these minutes have been shared earlier. Members would have had an opportunity to review the minutes. And if there are any inputs and additions, they would have an opportunity to then make them now. Hajira, the platform is yours to take us through the minutes briefly, and then we can look at the adoption.
We'll do that.
Thank you.
Acting Chairperson, I'm sharing minutes dated 6 February, where we met at 1400. That was a briefing by the department and BMI Technology Group, and also the presentation by the legal services on the legal opinion of the 3.8 billion commitment to SAPO. On the first page, Chairperson, we just have our attendance. On the second page, attendance as well. Opening and welcome. And then the opening remarks of the minister. Just to inform members that that the item was the briefing, but in terms of the briefing on SABC, there was a commitment to close part section B, which we did, and that was identified in the minutes. Thereafter, we had the presentation on SAPO by the legal advisors. We had observations by members on that matter, and we had, there's the matter as well as the SAPC, the observations, and I'll read the recommendations quickly, Chairperson. On SAPC, that the department must finalize consultation with National Treasury to align draft funding model to the committee for consideration before incorporation of the SAPC bill, that the department and ICASA must urgently develop a table regulatory reform plan addressing must-carry provisions, content, monetization restrictions, and access to public funding. And the board must ensure that the SAPC addresses operational inefficiencies and expand digital reach, that the department must submit a legislative incorporation roadmap outlining how the new funding model will be integrated with the SAPC bill, and that the committee secretary must institutionalize structured oversight engagement between National Treasury, the Department, ICASA, and SAPC in order to monitor progress on the funding model, regulatory alignment, and legislative preparation. On SAPO, the committee made the following recommendations: that the letter be addressed to National Treasury, Minister of Finance, and provide a detailed explanation as to the approval process for the 3.8 billion, the condition imposed, reasons for the decision not to allocate the funding, written clarification of the funding conditions, and the alternative funding avenues for SAPO, amongst others. And the Secretariat should plan towards convening a joint sitting in the second term with the Committee of Finance and allow National Treasury to formally outline all conditions attached to the funding of SAPO, outline differences amongst others. And then further down, Chairperson, I'm aware of the time, so I'm just rushing a bit. The presentation by National Treasury Department and BRP should also outline partnerships, negotiation, regulatory requirements, and sustainable expectation. That National Treasury should further clarify whether it remains procedurally possible for funding requests to be considered after October 2024. That the BRP must submit a detailed sustainability and viability report. That the BRP brief the committee on their understanding of government's funding commitments and the impact of the funding shortfall, provide creditor impact and labor impact assessment, and that DCT must table a regulatory reform plan for SAPO, that the committee will consider whether further legal advice is required on issues of reasonable reliance, legitimate expectation, and accountability arising from representations made in court. That future interventions involving state-owned entities includes explicit written funding commitments and clear approval timelines, and that the committee's secretary must schedule a quarterly SAPO oversight sessions to track business rescue process, treasury engagement, regulatory amendments, and partnership developments. The committee secretary to write a letter on the matters arising to the Minister of Finance. Chairperson, we have drafted the letter. It's with the chairperson to approve. Thereafter, it will be sent off. That is one set of minutes for the 6th acting chair.
Thank you. Can we do the second minutes? Okay, let's approve this, move for the adopt these minutes. Colleagues, we've received the minutes of this meeting, a very important meeting, and a clear line of march in terms of actionable item that the committee will be taking. May I please request your support to adopt those minutes, please? Honorable Singh.
Chair, I move for the adoption of the minutes.
Thank you, Honorable Singh. May I request someone to second the adoption?
I second.
Thank you, Honorable Bodlani. Thank you, colleagues. Hajira, the second minutes, please.
Chairperson, just it's a very short set of minutes. It's Tuesday, the 10th of February, where we considered the quarter 1 and quarter 2 quarter performance financial reports of NAMISA, Centec, BBI, IASA, USAF. We have our attendance on the first page, Chairperson. On the second page, members, we have attendance as well. And then we have opening and welcome. We adopted the minutes of the 3rd of February on that day. And we had the opening remarks of the department. And then just to note that the discussion took place with Centec, NAMISA, BBI, USASA, and that the report with observations and recommendations will be drafted for the adoption of the committee. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Hajira. And colleagues, just to remind you that we will be adopting a report of all the entities that came before us, Q1 and Q2, which will be, it's in the committee program. May I then request your assistance for the adoption of these minutes? Honorable Mkhafa? I see you've unmuted. Mover for the adoption of the minutes, please, colleagues.
I move.
Thank you, Honorable Bodlani. Can somebody second the adoption, please? Thank you, Honorable Mkhafa. Did you say you second the adoption? You seconded it, eh? Thank you. I think Honorable Mkhafa said second, Chair. Thank you so much, colleagues. Maybe now thank you so much for your assistance there and your indulgence. We've got 7 minutes before we close. We've got the ICASA, we've got the program. So let's do the program of the department quickly. There's been some changes. Mr. Mgoma, can I give you the platform in 2 minutes to take us with the program review and what are the reasons for the amendments, please? Or Hajira, whichever one is available. Hajira, there is an amendment to the program. I think it's important members see that there is a meeting that's been called up for Friday. Secretariat, who's going to be responding to this before we go to the third item, and that is the ICASA vacancies?
I'll just throw it up 1 second. I thought Mr. Ngoma was going to do it. Apologies.
Thank you.
Chairperson, we've made just a few changes. You've already discussed Friday, February 20th. That's in terms of the change in the parliamentary program. So now we have made application for the briefing of .Z and CETA on the 1st and 2nd quarter performance. Chairperson, the application has gone off. We wait approval. Once we've approved that, notices will come out. Then the next change, Chairperson, is on Tuesday the 10th, Chair, the content advisors felt that it's important that we deal with all international treaties and that we get a briefing there by DCDT. On that day, as you discussed earlier, we are going to adopt the Q1 and Q2 performance. So that's just a mere adoption of our report on that day. And so that's why we were able to squeeze that in there. There is a report that's been referred to us in the ATC, I think it's 2024. Mr. Ngoma has attached it to me. We await that the South African Human Rights Commission to investigate hearing. We got a message from the table staff to inform us that we need to deal with this and that we've overlooked it. So now we've scheduled it, but we don't have too much detail on it as yet. As soon as we have more detail, we'll inform members. And then the next item was this roundtable on the regulations for podcasts. Previously, on the 20th of March, Chairperson, we had this item. The item was called the presentation by CSIR and ICT Research, amongst others. We had it on the day of the 20th of March. And we needed a space to slot the podcast. We had intended to slot the podcast just here on the 27th, but the chairperson had concerns in that we are members will be leaving on the international study tour on that day. And she would also want that the roundtable is a physical meeting. We still need to get venues for that. So that's why we slotted, we just move this two around. So on the 20th now, we'll have a roundtable on the regulation of podcasts. And then this item that was on the 20th is now scheduled for the 27th. Thank you, Chairperson.
Is the item for the 27th, you got it as a half-day event, because members will be leaving on the 28th. The next day we leave on the international study tour.
That is correct, Acting Chair, and also it will be virtual, so members would have ample time to prepare. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Hajra, do we need to adopt this amended report, or is just a formality for information?
It would be good if you could adopt it, and then I have authorization to go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Colleagues, can we then, you've received the report together with the reasons. One of the questions I had asked is, why do we need to receive a report on the July unrest? As Secretariat has indicated, it was ATC'd, it was referred to us. We need to deal with it. The moment we have further reasons, we will be informed. So those few comments, can I seek your assistance to adopt that amended report, colleagues? Honorable Nkobese is very quiet. Honorable Megan, can you please support us in adopting these reports? Okay. So
yes, Chair, we do support. I do support, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Nkobese. Honorable Nkobese moves for the adoption of the amended report. Honorable Matafa, Honorable Khafa. Yaboga, thank you, Honorable Bodlani, for really assisting us. And lastly,
Hello, Andrew.
Yebo, you've seconded it. Thank you so much, Honorable Bodlani. Honorable Mr. Ngoma, the platform is yours. I'll give you 2 minutes to tell us quickly about this latest piece of correspondence you've received regarding the 4 vacancies. If he's not available, then I'll just quickly give a brief summary of what's going on. Mr. Ngoma has requested that he'll brief us here, so I've created the platform. Okay, colleagues, I think very briefly, we've got a letter from the Speaker's House. Speaker sent the committee a letter about, I think it's 4 vacancies in ICASA. The vacancies are at the positions come to an end in October and November. And that was pursuant to a letter that the minister would have sent to Speaker, making them aware. And the Speaker has now referred that letter to us to process and start the process of filling in those vacancies that will be arising. The minister had obviously requested that we plan ourselves such that there is no gap in ICASA, so that we can fill those positions timelessly. That is in a nutshell what correspondence we have received. And I think Mr. Ngoma usually provides a way forward. We will park that off. We won't deal with it now. Safe to say that we have walked this road before. We had 4 vacancies last year that we filled. We recommended 6 names, and I think I was informed that we were one of the only committees that managed to fill in 4 vacancies in a period of 3 months. So we've walked this path before. I'm sure in the next meeting, Mr. Ngoma will update us. Yes, Honorable Botlani.
Chair, perhaps as an intervention, we have received the letter. I'm not sure if the tabling is very important. Maybe what we can do in the meantime is to go back to our caucuses and decide on the representatives. But the next time we do deal with the matter, we already have the names.
No, thank you so much. Okay, colleagues. So the normal procedure is we establish a subcommittee on this year, and as Honorable Bolani has provided us guidance, we will then go to our caucuses, decide who will sit on that subcommittee, and then the process as we had walked this road before will unfold. So thank you so much, colleagues. That will be the briefing on the 4 ICASA vacancies that we need to deal with. Thank you so much. Remember, the House is sitting at 2 o'clock where the SONA debate takes place. I'll see you all in the House. Thank you so much. This meeting is adjourned.